Good afternoon. I'm Dan Borscher with this extended news coverage from Ngunnawal Country here in Canberra. Let's have a look at the details that we've just seen announced about the latest update on the COVID-19 situation. I'd like to bring in my colleague, reporter Lisa Glenday, to have a look at all of the details. Welcome. The numbers not as bad as we're expecting, are they?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. So we've got 2 new additional cases in Canberra today. That takes the total cluster now to 9. So what we've learnt today is these 2 new cases are both men. They're both aged in their 20s. What's most concerning with one of the men is that there are no obvious links to any other cases. The Chief Health Officer says it's still early in the investigation with that one, but worrying that it is not linked to any of the other cases at this stage. The other case is linked to the Fiction nightclub site. That's the original location, the first identified exposure site in Canberra for the early hours of Sunday morning. They've backdated that now until about 9 p.m. on Saturday night. We've learnt a little bit more detail today about the Gold Creek case. So we learnt a couple of days ago that a 14-year-old student there had tested positive. We now know that a close contact at the school is also positive. So we've got 2 cases now linked back to the Gold Creek school. But I guess this is some pretty good news now for a second day in a row. We had 2 cases yesterday, 2 cases again today. The first 6 cases in the ACT came through pretty fast. We had one after another in just over 24 hours, whereas we're starting to see a little bit of a trickle come through now. So not that grim news that perhaps some Canberrans were expecting. We're not in double digits yet. We're still just sitting at 9. We know that the Canberra cluster is linked to the Delta outbreak in Greater Sydney. Still no breakthrough into how that case has come to Canberra. I think investigations with ACT Health are still continuing. We really would like to know how that COVID strain has come to the capital. I think a lot of Canberrans are pretty keen to find out that information. Some good news that none of the active cases in the ACT are in hospital at the moment. They're all isolating and seem to be doing okay. But almost all of the confirmed cases that we've got here in Canberra are people aged under 40. That's obviously pretty worrying given that's a largely unvaccinated part of Canberra's population. The Chief Minister Andrew Barr today welcomed that announcement that we heard from Scott Morrison earlier this morning. I think it caught him on the hop. He didn't have much notice ahead of this press conference about some additional Pfizer doses for the Territory. The ACT is going to get 14,000 additional Pfizer doses. They will come online this week, but Chief Minister Barr says that's not going to make any significant inroads for the ACT. He thinks that's about the equivalent to 1 week's worth of extra doses. He says it will allow the ACT to do more, but he's working on what that will really mean for the Canberra community, and he's expecting that he's going to have some more information on that in the coming days. He's also welcomed that announcement from New South Wales about the statewide lockdown. Essentially for our region, what that now means is that everybody across the capital region is now in the same situation. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Queanbeyan or whether you're in Lyneham, everyone is in lockdown now. So I think for our region, I think that kind of makes things a little bit easier, and that just gives us that extra layer of protection. So something that the Chief Minister has welcomed.
Yeah, certainly adds to that clarity, and the Chief Minister pointing out he was informed about those additional doses just minutes before the rest of us across the nation got the details, so some more discussion to be had there. Lisa, you touched on that nightclub being one of these exposure sites and that time expanding. We also know that that list of places is growing. Can you give me a sense of what some of the other exposure sites are?
Yeah, so we've learnt today that there are 5,700 Canberrans who are now considered close contacts. That number is growing every day. It was up from 4,500 yesterday. So we're seeing as that list of exposure sites grows, obviously the number of close contacts is growing as well. We've now got about 52 exposure sites, and they're spread right across the Territory. So they're from the north all the way to the south. We're seeing a particular focus today on the Woden region. That's something that's new, something that's come through. Some of the new exposure sites include a car dealership in Phillip. That was all day on the 9th, 10th and the 11th of August. We've got Club Lime in Phillip, which was on the 9th of August. We've also got the Abode Hotel in Kingston on the 11th and 12th of August. Also, we've got the Southern Cross Club Stadium in Tuggeranong, which has been listed as a casual exposure site for Wednesday night. So that means that anyone that was there at that immediate time must immediately quarantine and get tested. We've learnt that a member of Basketball ACT is a confirmed case as well, which I'm sure we'll have a chat about later.
In addition to that, Lisa, what about testing? How are we going on that front?
So another record day yesterday, which is great news. So 5,943 tests conducted yesterday. That's a massive number, an all-time record level of testing in one single day. Of course, we had, yesterday was the first day of that brand new pop-up testing clinic at Gold Creek School. We've learnt today they are staggering the testing there. So people that were in the same year as that student are being prioritised for testing first. So they're going to stagger that and go through the different grades of school over the next few days. As we already mentioned, 2 confirmed cases as part of that Gold Creek School cluster. Waiting times are continuing to fluctuate. I know a couple of days ago we were hearing that people were waiting for as long as 8 hours to be tested. Some people were being turned away after waiting all day, late at night, they were being turned away. Yesterday, we had a huge decrease in some of those waiting times. I don't know whether it was a sunny Saturday in Canberra yesterday and perhaps people decided to do something else with their time, but particularly yesterday afternoon at Epic and Brindabella Park, we saw waiting times decrease to under 1 hour. And at one point at Epic late yesterday, there was no queue at all, which is a massive turnaround from what we were seeing on Thursday and Friday. We have heard today that some of those lines have crept back up again, particularly at the Western Creek testing clinic. They were experiencing very high demand this morning and people were being directed to go somewhere else just because they couldn't keep up with demand, while wait times at both Brindabella and Epic were lower again this morning. So I think definitely that opportunity for people who have been holding off getting tested, not wanting to sit in a car for 8 hours, then perhaps this weekend might be the time to go and do that.
Yeah, Lisa, just before I let you go, it was almost a case of blink and you'll miss it at the end. The Health Minister, Rachel Stephen-Smith, making an announcement about Defence's involvement, but there didn't seem to be a whole heap of detail there.
Yeah, that's right. So she just mentioned that the Department of Defence staff are going to be assisting with testing. So I think there's about 16 members of staff that are going to be embedded with ACT health authorities. So that will be a welcome boost. Not a lot of detail around that, but I think it's around 16 Defence staff members that will be on that front line helping out with testing. Yeah,
well, we'll wait to see a bit more detail of that. But good to have you along, Lisa Glenday, reporting there. And we also heard that very strong message from the Chief Minister to stay at home if you don't need to leave for one of those very specific reasons, and also from the Chief Police Officer saying that you've got to be wearing a mask if you're out and if you're ordering a coffee, presumably at the end of that hour exercise we can do at the moment, that you want to be making sure that you're not near people and then get out of there very quickly. Now, as we've mentioned, Basketball ACT says one of its players has tested positive for COVID-19. We've heard from the ABC that member is part of a local senior competition. The case has meant that the Southern Cross Stadium in Greenway in Canberra South is now one of those latest exposure sites that we were just hearing about. Here's Basketball ACT CEO David Simpson.
We received notification directly from the member that they had unfortunately received a positive COVID test result yesterday afternoon. They're a senior person, an adult, within one of our senior competitions. We understand that they are in good health, but we haven't had that information today to find out anything further. From our perspective, we instantly notified all of our members. We had a plan already in place ready for this sort of occurrence, and we're following our plan. So we've notified all of our clubs. We spoke directly to the teams and the clubs that were involved, and have notified all of our players and all of our members either last night or this morning of the positive test result within our community.
Australia will receive an extra 1 million Pfizer doses from Poland, with young people in COVID-19 affected parts of Sydney set to be given priority. Prime Minister Scott Morrison says the extra doses will start to arrive in Australia from tonight. He says more than half of the allocation will be targeted at people between the ages of 20 and 39 living in hotspot areas of Sydney.
There is hope. Indeed, there's more than a million doses of hope on its way. Earlier today, a plane left Dubai, having left Warsaw last night. We have been in discussions with the Polish government now for several weeks, and we have secured an additional just over 1 million doses of Pfizer, and they'll start landing in Australia from tonight. These doses are on top of the 40 million Pfizer doses that Australia has already contracted to be delivered, and of course will be ramping up again significantly in the fourth quarter of this year. These 1 million doses of hope, which will give people right across the country, particularly in New South Wales, where they are fighting this Delta strain in the most significant battle we have had in this country during the course of the COVID-19 pandemic up until now.
Victoria has recorded 25 new locally acquired cases of COVID-19 as the virus spreads into more parts of Melbourne. 21 of the cases are linked to known outbreaks and 12 were in isolation throughout their infectious period. 13 were in the community while infectious. Here's the Premier, Daniel Andrews.
Thanks for joining us this morning. There are 25 new locally acquired cases of coronavirus in Victoria. 21 of those cases are linked to known outbreaks. 12 of those, only 12 of those, have been in isolation throughout their infectious period. There were 32,280 test results received overnight, and I thank each and every one of those more than 32,000 Victorians who went and got tested yesterday. That's such an important part of our fight against this virus. It's such an important part in our steady steps towards reopening and getting control of this once again. There were 23,076 Victorians who were vaccinated yesterday through our state-run clinics. That's a significant number, right up there with our best performing days. One of our biggest days on record, and certainly the biggest for a Saturday since the vaccination program in our state centres began. As all Victorians know, I think we are leading the way in terms of the number of state sites and the number of jabs that have been administered through our state clinics, and we thank all of those nurses and others who are doing that really important work. That's how we will get to 70% and 80% as fast as possible. Of course, supply remains the biggest limiting factor, but the additional appointments that we announced on Friday and the target of 1 million doses over the next 5 weeks, I'm really pleased today to be able to announce that there'll be a further 84,000 appointments added to the website today and into tomorrow. So you can go online today, tomorrow, and book with certainty. So that's the best part of 300,000 additional appointments. That'll be available as part of our 5-week 1 million jabs in 1 million arms campaign. There are 1 million reasons to get vaccinated. They're all very personal, they're all very different. But from as someone standing at this podium, it's all about getting us opened up again and keeping us open. It's about a different set of rules. It's about resuming our economic recovery that is the envy of so many other parts of the nation, with strong growth and many, many jobs created. It's also about preventing people being admitted to hospital, being gravely ill. And of course, it's about preventing people from dying. Now, these announcements, this additional 84,000 appointments, does not relate to the announcements that the Prime Minister has made today, where there is pleasingly some additional Pfizer that's become available. That is good news. We always want to see more vaccine rather than less. I'm not entirely certain when that will come to us. I wouldn't advise anyone to change their plans based on that. Book with confidence based on what we announced last Friday, based on what I'm announcing today, which is another 84,000 appointments. They're a mixture of AstraZeneca and Pfizer. If you book at a state clinic, you come along, you'll speak to an experienced health professional, they'll have a conversation with you about whether AstraZeneca works for you, whether it's safe for you.
And just to update on those details today, there have been 2 new COVID-19 cases in the ACT overnight, taking the active cases to 9. That came from about 5,900 tests. We also know that 5,700 people have identified themselves as close contacts. Those exposure sites, the list is growing. And to get all of that detail, you can go onto the covid19.act website. For the very latest on this unfolding situation, go to abc.net.au/news. Go to ABC Radio Canberra anytime on Facebook as well. Yara, great to have your company this afternoon. Take care.